Hi, everyone. Welcome to MLSummit 2021. I'm really excited. I'm Jody Nolf, and I'm going to be presenting to you today. So let's get started. Let me start sharing my screen, and we're going to get right to it. So my session is titled LTELs Unleashing Their Superpowers. So the learning objectives for today are as follows. Through dialogues with several experts, you will gain an understanding of common traits that identify long-term English learners. And for the purpose of today, I will use that terminology. I know that it is starting to change. However, the federal government still recognizes that terminology. So that is what I'm going to choose to use today. Some common myths surrounding LTELs. You might not consider them myths, but I do. And I'm hoping that by the end of the session, you will too. And the unique talents of several LTELs and simple strategies for unleashing the superpowers of LTELs in content area classes. So let's look at what the research says about long-term English learners. They tend to lack progress towards English proficiency. They struggle in content areas that require academic literacy. They struggle with motivation, perseverance, confidence, and life and career skills. They exhibit strong oral skills, but less developed academic language skills. And they're at risk at not graduating from high school. Myth. I consider them myths. You might not. But I want to show you through some experts that these are not automatics. They are not commonalities in all LTELs. And so let's look at some unique superpowers of these learners. So I want to start by showing you how I began to unleash the superpowers. I did it through discovery, through questioning the experts. And that helped establish relationships. So I made a very informal student questionnaire of things that I wanted to know. I wanted to understand more about them, and I was very curious. I wanted to know where they were born, which I could find out from our student information system, yet I wanted to learn that from them. I wanted to know if you were born outside of the US, how old were you when you first arrived? I wanted to know, did you speak or understand any English before you started school in the US? Do you hear English in your home? Do you have access to books in English at home? Do you read or write in Spanish? Now, in our district, our LTELs tend to come from primarily Central American countries. Most of them come from Guatemala, some come from Honduras. So for the purposes of today, I was using Spanish as the home language. And I wanted to know if when you read, do you have to translate words from one language to another? I wanted to know, do you think in Spanish? And I wanted to know what they would say was their biggest struggle, not what the data says, not what their teachers say, but what they say they are struggling with. And it was amazing to learn. So let's meet my 5 experts. My students. Now, all of them have just completed 8th grade, although a lot of them, actually all of them, were working to recoup extra credits through summer school. They're all level 1 readers, and they are all in the lowest 25th percentile in both reading and math. And you might be saying, Jody, why are you focusing on their quote unquote deficits? Why are you focusing on the negatives? I did it so that you could see that despite these challenges, these superheroes have amazing, amazing powers. Just like all superheroes, they have some struggles, something that they need to overcome. Yet their superpowers are amazing, and they can reach leaps and bounds with the talents that they have We as educators just need to know how to unleash them and how to tap into them. Oh, and of course, I've changed all of their names, but these are actual students who I've known since sixth grade. Let's look at Yasmin. Yasmin was born in Guatemala, but she moved to the US when she was 3. She did not understand English before kindergarten, but she heard it in her neighborhood. She didn't understand what they were saying, but it was around her. She hears and uses English in her home with her siblings and on TV, but she speaks Spanish and Conjobal with her parents to preserve their family culture. So even at such a young age, these students understand the importance of preserving that rich culture, that rich heritage through language. She does not have access to books in English in her home. Very important, because as reading teachers, as we all are, we understand the importance of a print-rich environment. And although now there is technology and television and computers, there are not books and magazines in English lying around the house at her disposal. When her parents ask a word's meaning, very interesting, she defines it in Spanish, but she will still say the word in English. She thinks in Spanish, her input, but she will speak in English, her output. So she is constantly translanguaging from one language to another automatically. Talk about major brain power. She reads and writes minimally in Spanish. She told me, unsolicited, this was not part of the questionnaire, that if she were in a dual language program in elementary school rather than in an English only program, her Spanish literacy skills would be better. She knew that. That was all internalized. I did not ask her. She said, Miss Nolf, I was in English only, but I think if I were in dual like my friends were, I'd be able to read and write better in Spanish. And when she does read, she sometimes does need to translate words from one language to another. She can recognize cognates, but interestingly enough, she did not know that term initially. Her first answer was no, I don't use cognates. But once I explained to her what they were and provided examples and modeled, she immediately picked up on it. She feels that her biggest difficulty with reading and writing in English is word meaning and pronunciation. Look at that. Amazing, right? Because these English learners tend to be very fluent in oral language. Some of them speak with minimal or no use of an accent anymore. And these are the content area teachers who are saying, why are they still in MLSummit program? They speak perfect English. And we're going to look at that today to understand why they still need this program and need the scaffolds and need the strategies. So now let's meet Miguel. Miguel was born in the US, but his parents are from Guatemala, and he used to visit there in the summer, speaking obviously mostly in Spanish, but occasionally with some English. He did learn some English in preschool and through his friends. Both his parents know some English, and he does have access to books in English at home. He has that print-rich environment at his disposal in his home. He can read and write minimally in Spanish to communicate with his family. And when he does so simultaneously with his English, pulling from both languages to make sense of what he's reading, his input, and his writing, his output, constantly translanguaging automatically. He said that his biggest difficulty has nothing to do with his Spanish. He said, Miss Nolf, my Spanish does not impede my learning. He said, I think it's because I really don't know a lot of the vocabulary. It's that academic vocabulary that he needs strength in. He will think in English, but he adjusts his output to either English or Spanish, depending upon his audience. I will see him in his academic classes speaking English nonstop, but when he's in the hallways with his friends, some who are part of this superhero team, he's speaking in Spanish. It's amazing, the automatic translanguaging. So now let's meet Camila. Camila was born in Honduras, but she moved to the US when she was less than a year old. She did not speak any English before kindergarten, but she had friends who did. She was in a dual language program in elementary school. And just as a side note, it's a very popular program in my area. And my own daughters went through the same program. So it's a 50-50 immersion program of native English speakers and native Spanish speakers. She does hear English in her home now, but she didn't as a child, mainly because now she and her siblings are more proficient in English. So now they tend to speak it more in the home. Now, Camila does have access to books in English in her home. And it's interesting. She says, oh, I only read books in English. She has no interest in books written in Spanish. She does not need to translate words from one language to another. Now, she thinks in English. Her input is in English, and she processes in English. And it's interesting because she told me that she discusses and compares the process with her friends. I said, do you think in English? She said, yes, but some of my friends don't. We talk about this. And I thought that was amazing, that this is what they have conversations about at 14 years old. She said that she feels her biggest difficulty is maintaining focus, which makes sense. She actually was on school-based team in elementary school for tier 2 interventions for the academics, having to do with her inability to focus 100%. But notice that is not language related. That is not related to her native Spanish. That is not an impediment by any means. That is a focusing issue. So now let's look at Jesus. Jesus is 15. He was born in Guatemala and he moved to the US when he was 7. He moved at the end of 2nd grade, but he started school immediately. And I wanted to note that because his parents did not wait until after the summer. They put him in school right away. He did not understand any English before starting elementary school, and he does not have access to books in English in his home. He feels that his biggest difficulty when reading is the unfamiliar vocabulary, but he can pick up on cognates when I explain those to him, when I define them. And I put that down at the bottom. I want to read that to you. I kind of wavered back and forth whether to include it, and I thought it was important to note he has had several discipline issues in school, and he was a little hesitant to speak with me at first. He was a little suspicious when I told him I wanted to talk to him. But once we started having the conversation, he opened up more than any of them. The other ones knew me better. They always said hello to me in the hallways and we would stop and talk. He was a little bit more standoffish, yet once we opened that door of those questions, he was amazing and wanted to tell me so much. And it was just so beautiful. And my only regret was that I didn't do this sooner, because now it was towards the end of his middle school years. And now he's moving on to high school. And I'm a little saddened that I didn't do this process when he was in 6th grade. So now let's meet Luis. Luis is also 15. He was also born in Guatemala. He speaks Spanish, English, and Papti. He has never returned to Guatemala to visit. He taught himself to read and write in Spanish so that he can communicate with his family. He is entirely self-taught. Amazing, right? When reading in English, he sometimes processes thoughts in Spanish so that he can make sense of what he's reading. Isn't that amazing? So he reads, his brain will translate so that he can process. And if he's in an academic class or if he is in school, his output will be translanguaged back into English, constant back and forth. Amazing, right? He actually thinks in all 3 languages. That is his input based upon his audience, which makes sense. So when he's with his parents, he is communicating and thinking and processing in Papti. And he is working all throughout the summer to support his family. So here's an activity that I want you to think about. So in the chat box, I want you to think about, obviously we're not chatting right now, but I want you to think about all of the superpowers these students have. So what myths do these superpowers maybe dispel? So obviously, since we're not chatting, you can think or maybe jot them down to remember for later. So if you could brainstorm right now, that'd be great. But wait, Jesus and Luis are actually the same student. It all depends upon your perspective and how you view those students, right? Mind totally blown. Okay, so Jesus, who has had some difficulty with some discipline, I'm not going to lie. I mean, you know, he's not unlike many middle school kids. Yet, unlike many middle school kids, he has completely taught himself literacy in his native language. He is entirely self-taught. Amazing, right? So think about that. So we have to just keep learning, just keep learning. So the strategies for improving literacy skills in content area classes, this is what I learned from the experts, my students. So we need to establish the relationships through questioning, but notice questioning that focuses on their unique differences and thought processes, not their similarities as a group. And I admit I am completely guilty of that. As a classroom teacher, I did what we all do with the data. Okay, so he's a level 1, so he's going to be in this group. And this EL, well, he's a proficient speaker. He's been in the country this long, so he's going to be grouped with these kids. But I want you to notice that even these students who share the same data, for lack of a better word, have very, very unique processing skills. Some think in one language, some think in another, some think in both. We need to tap into that superpower. That's amazing. We need to harness that and use that to springboard our instruction and differentiate and scaffold that way. Teach students what cognates are and how to recognize them when reading. So the Cognate highlighter browser, which is right in the Chrome store, is easy to install and use, and that could be a great teaching tool. And here are some examples of what it does. It will highlight any text that's in your browser. And I want to emphasize, teach students what they are. Again, guilty as charged. I took it for granted. When I was a classroom teacher, I would have cognates on the board for my EL learners that were mainstreamed with my gen ed students. And I'd say, come on, you guys, you speak 2 languages. And they speak conversational English. I could communicate with them. Come on, you know what they are. They don't always know what cognates are. We need to model what they are. We need to show examples what they are and model how to use those cognates towards greater understanding of academic language. And that is where I faltered. That was the mistake that I made, that I think a lot of us make. So don't take it for granted that just because they have great oral fluency, that they know what a cognate is. And just because they are multilingual does not necessarily mean that they understand the concept of cognates. Unleash those superpowers. We know that these students have mastered oral fluency. So use alternate methods of assessment as they are developing their literacy skills. So here's what it could look like in each content area. So in math, explain to me the steps you took for solving for X and Y. In science, describe the process of mitosis. How is it different from meiosis? Social studies, tell me how a bill becomes a law. In language arts, paraphrase the author's claim, counterclaim, and rebuttal in the argument that we read aloud in class. Now, I know you all are from all around the country, all around the globe. I can tell you that in Florida, where I am from, these state assessments, our FSA, have a listening component on their ELA, on their language arts test. So these students do need to have listening skills. So here's how you take it a step further. And you don't have to wonder and say, well, okay, Jody, so, you know, now what do I do with it? They told me the answer. Big deal. So what? Well, then you take it a step further and you have the students record their answers. They can record it in a Flipgrid. They can also use a site called SpeakPipe, which is fabulous. It is free. It's right online. It will make an audio file, and you can save it in their site. It's a free account. I believe you can even email it to teachers if the students need to email it. And the greatest thing is they can practice their pronunciation. They can hear themselves talking, and they could play it and replay it again so that they can transcribe their thoughts, their answers. And then they can work on the literacy, the writing skills that way. There is no rule that says they have to go right from reading or listening to writing. No, use that oral fluency, use that superpower as a scaffold. Connect the academic vocabulary in relevant ways, using oral language as a starting point. Encourage pronunciation through repetition, read alouds, peer discussion, turn and talk, etc. All of those strategies that we employ with our level 1 readers, that we employ with our SLIFE students, our beginning speakers. Where is the law written that we can't use this with long-term English learners? So here we have a picture of the Volcán de Fuego in Guatemala. Here is the academic vocabulary. This is actually middle school curriculum. We have fissure, we have geothermal, we have magma, cascade, which is actually a cognate, cascada. We have to point that out. We have to teach that to them initially, and then we can scaffold. And then once the students really understand that concept, they'll be able to pick up the cognates on their own. And here's a tip. Even secondary students love to be read to. I don't care what student, I don't care what reading level. I've had 5s, 4s, 3s, 2, 1, all in my classroom. I've had ESE, ELL, every sort of student in my classroom. I raise my hand and say, who wants to be read to? They will all raise their hand. Even my excellent independent readers, they love it. And you might say, oh, but that's so passive. That's so babyish. No, it's not, because you teach them how to actively listen. You take it a step further, and that's when they will answer a question based upon what they heard. And sometimes, yes, it can be passive, but they are always learning. You might not see it right away, but they are learning and enjoying the idea of literacy. And that's a big part of it as well that we cannot dismiss. Allow for wait time. Oral fluency can be very misleading. Conversational English is not the same as academic discussion. Remember, some of our students need additional time to translate from multiple languages as they learn. I was completely guilty of this. I was misled. I was that teacher who said, I hear them talking all the time. I hear them speaking in English in the hallways and in the lunchroom. I hear them talking to their friends, but they never participate. I ask a question and that's the only time I can get them to be quiet. Well, because they are processing, because they don't know yet how to respond in an academic fashion, and they might not understand all of the terminology. And so that's what this is about, turning that gift of oral fluency in the conversational English into a more academic conversation through modeling, through strategies. Use sentence stems and frames to get students started on their writing. You know me. This is my go-to. This is my favorite. I hate that blank sheet of paper. And if teachers don't like it, you can rest assured, I'm sure those students don't like it either. It's very intimidating. Who says that you can't employ frames and stems for long-term ELs? Oh, but no, it's for all learners. So here is a paragraph frame for the RACES writing structure, which you can find on my website. It's an entire process. And here is a paragraph frame with a word bank that I used in 6th grade science. This is good for all learners. This is how you get them started. These are their scaffolds. They're not gimmies. Remember, we do not give, we guide through scaffolds and strategies. So let's connect. You know I love connecting with people. You can reach me at Twitter, on Twitter at Jody Nolf. Here's my email. My website has tons of goodies. My Padlet has tons of goodies. It has videos. It has templates. Please share with your staff. Use in your professional development. get those into the hands of your teachers, or if you are a content area teacher yourself, I encourage you to use them in your classrooms. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today.